Hey, so this is Tracy Fair. I'm with the Mental Health Education Resource Center, and this is Rocking Your Recovery. This is where we talk to people who've had some pretty inspirational and hope-filled stories to share with us. And today we have Robyn Priest, who's a very special guest. And I'm just going to say a few words about Robyn. I know a couple of things about her, but not a lot. But Robyn is a straight shooting Aussie, self-described, and a nonconformist. She has been part of, or I guess the creator of Live Your Truth, a mental health and peer support education and strategy firm. She's also known as a peer support guru. Robyn has been involved in the development and training of mental health and peer services for over 20 years and in 10 different countries. I'm already really impressed.
It's not. I've just been super lucky. Right place, right time.
Yeah, in many places. So Robyn's completed, as part of an international team of consultants, the Mental Health Commission of Canada's Making the Case for Peer Support. She's seen as one of the premier experts on peer support internationally. Known as the horse whisperer for mental health advocates, she is highly sought after public speaker, and her signature strengths are authentically connecting with people, making shit fun, and simplifying the message. Robyn's passion is helping people to go from surviving to thriving. So with that, I'll just welcome you, Robyn. And how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, actually. Surprisingly, with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, but it's been a really cool time for me to slow down. I was traveling, and now I get to slow down and take a look at everything in my life, and it's been amazing. Amazing.
So this whole COVID thing is actually an opportunity then, really?
Oh, for me, it's been a phenomenal opportunity to take a look at what's really important. Like a couple of years ago, Charlotte Sitnick and I started the business Robyn Priest, Live Your Truth. Like we've been like trying to create new business, talking about peer support everywhere, workplaces, health services. And, I was flying like 2 and 3 weeks a month, and now I get to actually sit and be, and it's just amazing. And like that actually had my head like go quiet for the first time that I can ever remember. So yeah, COVID's been this weird blessing in disguise.
Yeah, it's kind of like the silver lining, of the pandemic, I guess.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, about living your truth and about peer support. I'm not sure if all of the people listening know too much about either one of those. So if you can fill us in a little bit about what living your truth is, how did you come to that name, and what's peer support from your perspective?
Sure. I mean, like I'll take the peer support piece first. So peer support, really, the simple piece of it is like people with similar experiences sharing with each other and supporting each other. So if I think about, for me, I have a mental health diagnosis. I'm really open about it, bipolar disorder. And like it's being able to chat with other people who have like mental health issues, whether diagnosed or not, but dealing with life and being able to be in those different conversations. Like I have been at times what people would call suicidal. I have in the past attempted to end my life, and being able to have a conversation with someone who's had similar feelings allows you to just have a different conversation. I fly a lot for work.
Okay.
And always on planes go, "What do you do for a living?" And I'm like, peer support. And they're like, "What's that?" And I go, "Well, do you know what a mothers and babies group is? Mothers get together and share with other mothers." And they're like, "Yeah." And I go, "Peer support's just one of those groups for crazy people."
And are they surprised when you say something like that?
No, people kind of go, "Oh," but most people go, "That makes sense." Being able to chat with someone who's, maybe gone through a tough time and being able to share the ways you got through it and the things about that are phenomenal. And also families supporting other families who have gone through some similar stuff. So that's the simple,
Okay.
like,
So
you know,
peer support is about the person who maybe has had a mental health issue, but also family members who've had a loved one or a friend. Maybe it's not just a family, but so other people who've lived with people or who've been close to people who've had a mental health issue or crisis.
yeah. So individual to individual, if you've
Right.
had your own experiences, or family and friends to family and friends. So, um, like, it's pretty cool. And the research is showing that it adds such an amazing amount to services and people's experience of like getting through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the simple way of talking about peer support. And the business is called Robyn Priest Live Your Truth.
Okay.
Charlotte wanted to throw the name Robyn Priest in there because I'd been involved in research and work in different countries, and I was really keen to say living your truth. Like, I truly believe that we actually know inherently in ourselves what is pretty cool for us to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And live your truth was saying, like, trust yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not allow other people to determine what it is for us. And we don't always have to agree with everyone in our lives. Like, I don't necessarily agree with my mum. Like, I've come out and told my mum that I feel like I'm in the wrong physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And like, her view is keep that weirdness on the other side of the world if you're going to do anything about it.
She doesn't want to hear about it.
Well, yeah, she's like,
Mhm.
you're my daughter. Your name's Robyn. And I'm like, well, I call myself Robyn for work and Rob in my personal life,
Mm.
and live the way that feels comfortable to me. And we're not necessarily going to agree on that. But I want to live my truth because that was part of my mental health stuff
I
too,
was
right?
just going to ask you about that. How did you get to a place, where you can be so confident in what your truth is? Because I know a lot of people struggle with that sometimes for their whole lifetime. They don't have the courage or the confidence to be able to say, this is who I am. And I've had a bipolar disorder, if you want to call it that. I'm feeling like maybe this isn't how I was born and this is who I'm really meant to be. How do you get to that place?
I think for me, one of those things was like, I went through some pretty tough times. I said before, I have attempted to not be on this planet anymore, to kill
Yeah.
myself. I'm super glad I'm crap at it. Like, I'm super glad I'm not good at doing that.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I would be here
You wouldn't
living
be
this.
here. I'm glad you didn't either.
Yeah. Um, but I think for me, there was like people who talked to me, who believed in me, who shared their experiences. And there was little by little. And like a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago ish now, like, I really did. I sat on my couch with a knife going, do I really want to be
Hmm.
here?
That
And
recently. That
yeah,
recently.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
Okay.
that moment, I was like, oh, my whole life I haven't felt like I fit in.
Mm.
And like, I really started to think about what didn't feel like it fit in.
Mm.
And I realized that I really felt like I was in the wrong body. So, I've talked about it in some of my keynotes, but I threw out all my clothes apart from bras, um, and bought other clothes that felt more like me,
Mm.
right? So now, and I really had people cheering me on that
Mm.
had gone through their own experiences, not the same, but just going, I don't want to live like this anymore. And
Mm.
sometimes, we stay in a place because we're comfortable in the uncomfortableness of it,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah.
we know it and it's safe. And what I want to support people, part of living your truth is supporting people to go, it's okay to step out.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to not get it right or fail, or because they're just about us being able to learn. And
Mm-hmm.
truth be told, like, I had another time 2 months ago where I was like, yeah, do I want to be here?
Hmm.
And like since that moment, and I procrastinated. A friend wrote a
Mm-hmm.
book called The Procrastinator's Guide to Suicide. Living life when life doesn't feel like living.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, just procrastinate when you feel like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And I did. And the next morning I woke up and I went, actually, that's not what I want. I want to live for me. And so
So
I've
it's not
started,
about not wanting to be here. It's about wanting to live again
yeah,
out of your own truth in your own way.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's a difference too. And I've heard it so when people are talking about hurting themselves or killing themselves. Is it, and maybe you said this, is it you don't want to live anymore, or is it the right now, that's very difficult?
Yeah, when I talk to people, like I have a bunch of people that call at times not doing as well maybe as they could be, and I that is one of the questions I say, is it that you don't want to be alive anymore? Like
Mm-hmm.
you want it done, or is it that what's occurring for you right now feels like there's no other way, or I just want to stop what's happening now? And that gives us another ability to have a really interesting conversation about that. And
Yeah.
most people that I've talked to are like, I just want this feeling to stop.
Right. And so when I was going to ask you, how do they respond? It gives a person something to think, okay, no, it's this awful existence in this moment. It's not a forever thing necessarily.
Yeah.
Um, do you think people in that time have a hard time imagining uh, how things could be different? I don't know if that's something you experienced yourself, is
Um,
being not able to see past that difficulty in the moment.
I think that's one of the biggies, right? Like, well, I mean, for me, when I'm in that hole, like I don't see a way out. And that's part of the reason why I love peer support and why I love what I do, and being able to have conversations and go, yeah, like I don't understand your exact circumstances, but for me, when I was in that hole, it was like, I have no idea how to get out, and I don't
Mm,
think there is an out. And people have just asked me questions about, okay, you might not, but if you could, well, what are some of the things you might want to do?
mm,
And often I can go, oh, well, I'm not going to get out, but yeah, oh, here's what if it was
mm-hmm,
different. And then there's just this little glimmer, right, that
mm.
we can have a conversation about. And so I think that's super cool when we can be open and honest about how we feel, and not have people go, oh my God, we have to get you to the hospital, or we have
Right.
to do this, or we have to enact all of this stuff. And if we can just have open, honest conversations about how we feel,
So
like,
that is part of, I'm just wondering, what is the difference between being supported by a peer in a moment like that or a time like that, and maybe they're not exclusive of each other, but that or a so-called professional like a clinical person or a psychiatrist or somebody, what's the difference between the peer support? Do they work together at all? Like, can the two go hand in hand, like to have a more of a professional intervention and peer support? Like, maybe just tell me about that.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, right? They can be, but I don't think they have to be. And I think it's also important to recognise that many mental health professionals also have their own experience of dealing with family or friends or themselves, having some kind of mental health
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I think when I talk about it, like, mental health clinicians are bound by their job descriptions, codes of conduct, codes of ethics, and so are peer workers.
Right.
Like, don't think we're not if we're in jobs, but like a peer worker comes with not an agenda to fix, solve, stop symptoms. They come
Mm-hmm.
to be with you on an exploration. So a person once described the difference to me, like a clinician who'd never experienced mental health stuff, they said, was like trying to describe the color blue to someone who had never, ever seen.
Okay.
Versus a peer worker was describing the color blue to someone who had sight
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they had an idea. And another analogy someone used once was, if I want to learn golf and I want to play on a particular course, I can go and take golf lessons anywhere and I can learn the basics of golf. But if I want to know how to play on that course, I go to the golf pro who plays that course all the
Okay.
time.
Yeah. So it's the experience part of it. They talk about lived experience. I think that's how we, so having it doesn't have to be the exact thing,
Yeah.
but at least a little bit along the way, having had the experience of coming to a real low, maybe having an experience of working in the system, being in the system and trying to get your needs met, or feeling lost in all of that, having a diagnosis. I know there was a time where the diagnosis was the be all and end all. The diagnosis became the person, and you didn't talk about somebody as living with something, but they were a depressive, or they were schizophrenic, or they were, and that language, is just, I can't imagine us talking like that now, but sometimes some people still do think that way.
And the way I talk about language is I go, like, if someone's got heart issues, we don't call them a heart attack in waiting.
Yeah.
Or we don't talk about someone as a cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we talk about someone with it. But for some people, getting a diagnosis feels like a lifesaver for them, because they're like, oh, that's why my
Okay.
life's been like this. And for other people, they don't care about a diagnosis. They want to just think about what's happening for them now. And I think that's one of the things I talk about. I tell people my diagnosis, not because I hang on to it, but sometimes it gives you street cred. Yeah, I've got this diagnosis. And people are like, oh, and I go, but I haven't taken medication in over 11 years now.
And then they go, oh.
And then they go, oh, and I go, I'm not anti or pro medication. I'm pro informed choice, that
Yeah.
people get to experience all of the things that are available for them, and then get to pick the one that works for them. And it might be, I have friends who swear medication's a lifesaver.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's cool. Find your jam. So if someone says having a diagnosis of whatever it is, I know someone that said when they got a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, like, their life made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And for other people, they're like, I don't want to know that.
Yeah.
I want someone to support me in how to live with whatever's happening, whether it's
Right.
voices or seeing things, or what people call psychosis or whatever. And sometimes there's a cultural aspect too,
Mm-hmm.
right? We talk about those things as gifted people in certain
Right.
cultures. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
In some indigenous cultures, it's a person who's able to see into other places, and have a gift that the rest of us are kind of maybe not open to.
I worked in Guam for a little bit, and there was a woman there who was in her 50s, and she said she was born breech birth.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was 5, her grandmother spoke to her and said, as a breech birth baby, you're a healer, and you will hear voices, and you get to choose, do you listen to the ones that feel not as good or negative, if you might call it that, or the other ones? And like, she was telling me this story, and I'm like, what a beautiful way of just talking about stuff without medicalizing it.
Right. Wouldn't that be interesting if we all had that kind of beginning, to understand ourselves and understand our experiences like that? It would be very different, I would think, the whole realm of mental illness. And I know that I try to avoid saying mental illness. I don't like the sound of it. I don't know how you feel about that.
I am not, I don't use that term. I use mental health, because I think mental health's on a continuum, right?
Yeah.
And some days we have great mental health and life's going really well, and some days our mental health is not as great as it could be, or it might even be extreme where it's like really upsetting and stressful and stuff. But I talk about mental health on a continuum, maybe mental health issues, mental health challenges, but I also, like many of us are now talking about mental well-being as a
Right.
concept.
Mm-hmm. So how does that fit? Does it, I'm guessing it fits a wider, larger community. It's not about those people that have this mental illness or these diagnoses. It's about all of us being on a continuum, that everybody has experiences of mental wellness and more fragility at different times.
Well, if we look at stuff now, right? If we look at COVID as a prime example, many of us with what people would call mental health issues have been waiting our whole life. We've had anxiety. We've been like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and many of the people I know with anxiety are sitting in it now going, oh, no problem, got this. And
Mm-hmm.
general population are like more like stressed and what you call anxious about it. And I think, like, I'm hoping that as people come through this, that we have a world that has more empathy and compassion for people who experience mental health challenges at times,
Mm-hmm.
because the general population have got to experience that saying, just get over it,
Mm-hmm.
or like, come on, buck up, doesn't actually help. Now, if I think about in terms of peer support,
Mm-hmm.
do I think every single person can just do peer support? No, because some people don't like people, so they're not going to be good in the
That's a kind of a requirement. Yeah.
yeah. But I also think, like, if you're going to be working in an emergency kind of setting or an inpatient unit, you want to have had some of that experience to be able to connect with people. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Or if you've been in the justice system and there's peer support in the justice system, you're able to have different conversations. So,
Right.
I want to make sure when I talk about peer support and, like, the world has mental well-being or mental health on a continuum, that I think there's a place with the impact that it has on people's lives and where it's occurred, like, sort about the peer support piece of it.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like matching people a little bit, like with peer support. Like you said, if somebody's going to be working in a hospital, then it would be good if they had some of that experience so that they can help to support a person through navigate that, and not just learn it by the book. So, but if someone's in community, then it's
Yeah.
quite fitting that maybe they didn't necessarily go through a hospitalization or something like that.
Well, yeah, I do believe that. And I think it's interesting because around the world there's a debate in peer support about who's a peer. And
Okay.
there used to be this thing that if you hadn't been in hospital, if you didn't have this formal diagnosis, you weren't able to deliver peer support. But
Mm-hmm.
our option was saying, we want to keep people out of hospital. So I'm like, so are we becoming a dying breed then? Like,
Mm-hmm.
of those who have, if our whole focus is to keep people out. And if I think about our youth today, because I'm getting a bit old now, 54.
Oh, you're
But if
still
I think
young.
about if I think about our youth, they
Mm-hmm.
want a different way of supporting and being with each other. And so, youth are going to be able to support youth with things that, like, as much as I want to be young and hang in there,
Mm-hmm.
like, they're still going to have different ways of being, right?
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
changing with the times.
Yeah.
On that, you've been in a lot of different countries. Do you see a difference in terms of how peer support exists and stigma? That was something else I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
Is there a difference, like being in Canada versus being in, I don't know, you said you've been in Alaska, of course, Australia,
Yeah.
similarities and differences? I don't know.
I I think stigma is and discrimination are all over the world. Like, I think people say mental health and or mental illness, and everyone's like, oh, like, and so I think there's countries that don't talk about illness being this horrible diseasey thing that we sometimes talk about it in Western medicine. And so I think they have a shot at that, but I think there's still stigma everywhere, like, because people are educated, like our media educate people. Crazy person kills everyone.
Yeah.
They never come back and say they had a mental health assessment and actually they don't have a diagnosed mental illness.
Right.
But we never get the media going, man with schizophrenia has family, has job, has a great life. Like, it's like,
No.
yeah. So
I have a little bit of a pet, well, I don't know if it's something that bothers me these days, is a lot of people turn to people who they don't like or they see as someone being destructive. And I have to say there's somebody across the border, a president, who shows some very bad signs as a human being. And so people say, well, he's mentally ill. And that kind of hits me the wrong way, because I feel that we're stigmatizing people more when maybe there's some people that just aren't very nice. I don't know. That's just one of my little pet peeves, I guess.
I'd probably be along the same lines as you, that there are some people who are just not as nice as others. And I think what happens is when things like anyone south of the border or any mass shootings, people are trying to work out why someone could be the way they were. And so they go to, oh, I can explain it by that person's got a mental illness, even though they probably don't, right? But I think it's a way that society tries to make sense of things that do not make sense.
What about, and I think this may happen on occasion, is where services aren't there. So there's people that have fallen through the cracks and they're there all the time, but some people who maybe have reached out have not gotten the help that they've needed, and then have come to a crisis point, and it might turn bad, and then that becomes a whole public spectacle. And then it's, while the person was mentally ill, when maybe it was because that person didn't get the help that they needed early on enough, that there was no intervention, there was no prevention, anything like that. I don't know if you have an opinion on that at all, or.
Oh, Tracy, you would have worked out I have an opinion on everything.
I kind of thought so. I'm just afraid it might be not mine. That's okay.
I guess for me, what I think is we have a system built around crisis. So we have a system that teaches people, if you're not in crisis, you're not going to get supported. Like, I've been talking to a number of people around the world, like peers, about this, that, like, and we can argue there's not enough money, or I don't know if it's always about the money or the way we set the system up. I'm one of those people that it's not always about throwing more money. It might be actually looking and going, do we provide the right supports? But we currently have a system that if you're not in complete crisis, you really don't get help. Like, if I think about Winnipeg here, how many people in the last 5 years, more than I know, than I want to count, have gone in and said, I feel like I can't get through this. I feel like I'm going to kill myself. And the service are like, well, you're not critical enough, go home. And then people walk out and they're gone.
Yeah.
I think, like, we're starting to put, and I'm not saying peer workers are the saviors of everything, but we're starting to put peers in some different services. And I would say, with my experience of peer support in other places, that we will see a decrease in some of those situations, because peer workers can have a conversation with someone when they're not in crisis.
So tell me a
Um,
little bit about that. So that's happening in Manitoba now, where there'll be paid peer support people.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a 2-year pilot just starting now, where in the crisis response centre, there'll
Mm-hmm.
be individual and family peer support workers. And they're also doing a trial in Dolphin Regional Health Centre in the emergency room
Okay.
with individual and family peer workers. And like we were just today talking about the evaluation mechanism of talking with people about their quality in terms of how they felt before and after peer support, but
Mm-hmm.
also the impact stuff. So we're going to start measuring, do people feel
Mm-hmm.
more able to deal with difficult situations after they've talked to peer support. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're super excited that the
Mm-hmm.
government has finally kind of put some money in,
Mm-hmm.
and we're hoping, like what we would like to see is peer support in every single emergency room.
Do you think that's possible? Do you think that's something that could happen here?
I don't see why not. Like,
Yeah.
um, I remember being part of a discussion in Ottawa as part of doing some research before that kind of thing started there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people said they come into the emergency room because they don't know where to go and they need someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Right? And rightly so. Emergency room
Mm-hmm.
workers are dealing with so much.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have the time, and they're like in out, and
Mm-hmm.
they do the best that they can. I want to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
people don't think I'm
Yeah.
going workers are sending people away. They're doing the best they can, and
But they're
where we
trying to fill a gap by the
yeah,
sounds of it.
yeah, and where we've
Yeah.
implemented peer support in emergency rooms or set up warm lines where peer workers are on calls before people get to crisis, the crises have decreased.
Hmm. And I am guessing that it is a way to do it that's, I hate to say it, cost effective, efficient, and useful because of what people bring. And the people that are coming into it are doing it because it's what they want to do, which adds another layer of importance and meaning and purpose, too, for people. And role modeling, that people can see that I could be here. There's hope, not role modeling. I don't like that word very much either, but hope, seeing that there's people out there and that maybe that could be me, or, I can get through this.
I think that's one of the biggies, right? Like when people have lost hope and they meet someone who maybe has shared some similar experiences. I know when I talk to people about having come through those dark times or having come through the very excitable times, I don't call it
Mm-hmm.
maybe, I call it um, but being able to share, yes, like there are times that images to me come screaming out of people's clothes or pages, and I've worked out how to manage that and live with that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit naughty because sometimes when I'm training providers and they maybe they're not as smiley at me, I go, yeah, go figure. I made a career out of being crazy, and I've lived in 4 countries and I've lived in 10, and I do keynotes in different parts of the world, and I get to create mental health services.
And your qualifications are?
Well, I have some degrees, but I
Yes.
never
Yeah.
talk about them, and they're not in
Mm-hmm.
mental health related fields. But
Yeah.
on our website, we talk about us. You read my bio before,
Mm-hmm.
and then down the bottom on that page, we have if letters matter. Because to me, letters don't matter in terms of this. This is about a person-to-person connection and my practicum, right? Workers go off and do
Mm-hmm.
their practicum
Right.
somewhere. My practicum is living every day with my mental health,
Hmm.
right? Dealing with what do I need to do to get up, suit up, show up,
Mm-hmm.
and do what I do.
So that keeps you in a very authentic kind of place. It's very real because you're living it still. It's not
Yeah.
something that you've done in your past and you're over. It's every day by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I do think though, when I talked about I had that place where my head went quiet,
Mm-hmm.
and I've lived with a very noisy head my whole life. And, it was about 2 months ago my head went quiet, and I go, oh, that's a really different feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So, do I deal with my mental health stuff every day now in the same way as before? No.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm still cognizant that there are things I need to do for self-care for me, and
Mm-hmm.
to look after myself when the world seems a little busier.
Does it help to have a memory of the times that were really challenging? Does that help at all in the work that you do?
Oh, totally for me.
Yeah.
Like I draw on those experiences all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And be it for the grace of God if you're religious. I'm not, but like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm not going to be back there tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like so I want to be authentic and have humility
Mm-hmm.
and be with people in whatever my day looks like.
Mm-hmm. So the title of this program is Rocking Your Recovery. And the recovery part might be a little bit antiquated. It's rocking your wellness recovery, I guess. But it sounds like, having that memory of when things were bad, it's not dwelling in it, it's bringing the whole of you to your experience. It's not like you're living out of that anymore, but it's becoming whole and having that as part of your foundation, but you're not living out of it anymore. You've kind of moved out of that, but it's still there in your roots.
Well, I think it's part of what defines me, right?
Okay.
It's part of what made me who I am in this moment. And
Mm-hmm.
it may look different next week or the week after, but I think all of my experiences together have made me who I am and
Mm-hmm.
made me okay to have the conversation. So there are times I allow myself to go into a place of really deep memory of it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's for a time, right? I don't kind of stay in there. Like I'll allow myself to lay on the couch and cry,
Mm-hmm.
or be in the shower and cry, or whatever that looks like, and go, oh my God, I had some pretty tough times. Um, but I also don't like dwell in that long term.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a whole lot of ways to get out of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have my dog, I walk, I have friends I chat
Mm-hmm.
to, I like I've started getting up in the mornings and doing beach body country heat exercise, which makes me laugh and
Yeah.
smile, right? I look silly. I'm glad nobody can see me doing it. You know, but I think one of the things that sometimes some people want to forget it and get past it and not think
Mhm.
about it again,
Yeah.
and that's cool. And some people want to remember those pieces,
Mhm.
and some people don't remember them even
Right.
if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And it's about what is it to you? What does wellness, well-being, recovery mean
Mhm.
to you? Sometimes it's I got out of bed and
Mhm.
got to the couch and cried.
Exactly. Yeah.
And sometimes it's I got on a plane and traveled the other side of the world to give a keynote.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
none is more or less
Yeah.
important than the other. And I think that sometimes happens in the world too, right? People like,
Mm.
you're more recovered, you're
Mhm.
less, you're not.
A competition. Yeah.
Oh, it's not a
Yeah.
competition, right? It's a
Mm.
competition with ourselves, but
Yeah.
nobody else.
Yeah. And everybody, that sounds trite, but we're all unique. And so however we live out of that recovery or wellness place is going to have a unique flavor depending on what we've been through and what our hopes and dreams are and what we like. And we're individuals beyond, having had a mental health crisis or concern, but that's not all we
Yeah.
are, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. But I had a couple of questions for you. I wanted to ask you, is there any person or author or someone that has inspired you along the way? Someone, I'd say hero or heroine, but it doesn't have to be. It can be someone you know, or?
I think there's a few people. If I
Mhm.
think about like there's a number of people, not necessarily authors, and some are. So when I first started in peer support, there was a woman named Susie Stevens who gave me my first job in New Zealand.
Mm.
Took a chance on me, and at the same time, there was someone in that organisation called Anne Stidworthy in New Zealand, and they mentored me. And last year, I think it was last year, they both died within a week
Mm.
of
Oh.
each other. It was like Susie and I didn't always get on, but I hold her in terms of the passion that she had for peer support and
Mm.
what they call consumer involvement in services and stuff. But if I think about some of the authors, like Mary O'Hagan from New Zealand wrote a book, and for the life of me right now, the book is gone. Um, but she shares her story in that book
Mm.
about like getting through stuff. I think
Mm.
Judy Chamberlain on our own out of
Mhm.
Massachusetts. I mean, one of the like grandmothers of the movement. I think
Mm.
Pat Deegan talking
Yeah.
about her recovery. Like
Mhm.
those they give me goosebumps when I think
Mhm.
of them. But um, you know, there's people they're the the kind of modern day founders of our movement, so they will always hold a special place. But I'm watching young people now just
Mhm.
tell it how it is, and
Mhm.
um, I'm like, and for the life of me I can't come up with names right now, but I'm
Mhm.
watching young people just share their experiences of life, the good, the
Mhm.
bad, and the ugly, and I go, that's what we want. We
Mhm.
want people to just share from their heart.
They don't
About,
have the same kind of censor that maybe, you know,
yeah,
we did back in the day. They could
people,
be more.
they're just he, she, they, them, like whoever they are,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
it's just beautiful to watch younger people just share more
Mhm.
and, not be as um, ashamed or feeling of guilt. And I know that there's still that stuff there, right? I know there's still
Yeah.
stigma and discrimination, even with kids, but
Mhm.
I think they just have this much better shot at just sharing from their heart.
Mhm. So that would say to me that there's been some progress, uh, that
I
some of
think,
those early leaders in the movement made a significant amount of change, you know, or we wouldn't be here now talking about that.
yeah,
Um,
I hats off to them. And there's times where I see significant change, and then I go to somewhere and I go, oh, I'm back in the 1950s.
mhm.
And
Mm.
like, and I guess then, like for me, it's a challenge because I go around the world and I go into small communities, and people have never heard that people recover
Mhm.
from schizophrenia or bipolar. And what does recover mean? Well, people got the life they wanted, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I've heard so many people say, you don't take medication, and I'm like, yeah, the side effects weren't great for me, and I wanted to work
Mhm.
out how to live without it. And I was on a big dose of meds.
Yeah.
I think I just had a little dose. I checked with my friends, and I'm like, I'm on 10 times what you're on. Am I super crazy? But I just think the more we can talk about it and people
Mhm.
can see that even with particular diagnosis, you can live and work and love. And,
Mhm.
I remember when we were first talking about, I did some work for the Mental Health Commission of New Zealand.
Right. Okay.
And I remember the conversation at one point was, what's recovery? Uh, well, it's what you want, but it could be a job, a house, and a date on Saturday night.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's my definition
Yeah.
of
And for a lot of, I think for a lot of us who sort of have used that word or that term or gotten to know it,
yeah.
it's not about not having any, I don't know what you want to call it. Some people say you can have an illness, if you want to call it that, and you can be fully in recovery. It's what you do with it, and you can live well, and you can have that continuum where you have the good days, you got the bad days, whatever. You know.
I have a I have a friend who sees pink snakes
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, eats
Mm-hmm.
them, sleeps with them, walks on them, and has a great life. I have another friend of mine, a fabulous Māori man in New Zealand, so
Mm-hmm.
Indigenous.
Yeah.
Um, he has voices screaming at him at times, telling him how awful he is.
Mm-hmm.
And and he's one of the senior people in the mental health services in a
Yeah.
particular area and does an amazing job. And he came to Palau with me a
Mm-hmm.
couple of years ago to do our first like get together with people there, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone was like gobsmacked that
Mm-hmm.
he could live this great life even with that. So I think one of the things I struggle with is we've been talking about we can do this forever, and it's about supporting us in empowerment and
Mm-hmm.
self-determination and choice, and we have services now going, we're recovery oriented, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just getting there. This is a term
Mm-hmm.
been around 40
Yeah.
years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all like, yeah, we're talking about wellness and well-being
Yeah.
now. And they're like, what?
What happened?
Yeah, and
Something
there's
slipped
still
by.
stuff where they won't let people make choices because they think
Mm-hmm.
they can make the best choice for people. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to ground people in we're not gonna,
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to do stuff that they don't want to, that
And
someone else
so
is telling them.
that's where the peer support can really kind of shake the system up a little bit in a very gentle way and go, you know what? This person, regardless of their state of mind, has an ability within themselves to make their own decisions, to make their own choices with a little bit of help from a friend. They can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I won't sing. And on that note, before we go, I just wanted to ask you: do you have a favorite song that inspires you, or makes you feel good, or kind of your own theme song?
Uh, yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I have it as a ringtone on my phone.
Okay,
And do you want me to play it quickly?
sure. If it's on your phone, you've got it handy.
I do have it very handy, and it's my ringtone that I just love. And here we go.
Okay.
That
Who is
like
that?
Pharrell's Happy.
The what?
Like Pharrell's Happy.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Very
it makes
nice.
me smile, and that is my
Mm-hmm.
ringtone
Yeah.
for most of the people. There are other
Mm-hmm.
ringtones for certain people,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the one. And whenever someone calls me, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
So that's the one we'll remember you on here today, your
There,
theme song.
there is one other by
Mm-hmm.
Danielle Bradbury called Sway, and if you
Okay.
haven't heard it, like it's awesome because it goes, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we all have bad days,
Mm-hmm.
but just sway to the right, sway to the left.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a happy song. Yeah.
And I asked that question because, sometimes we need something tangible, and music can be very tangible. If we're in a troubled place, we hear something, we'll always remember that. So hopefully if people are listening today, you'll check out those pieces of music. And so I have to thank you, Robyn. Thank you. So I know you work really hard and you made time to extend your day today, to do this. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We'll post any information on you. We are going to have you on our YouTube channel, so uh, people can enjoy and hear more about your
Can
story.
I do a bit of a plug? Am I allowed to do a little
Yes,
plug?
go ahead.
So since COVID started, every day on Robyn Priest, like at my Facebook work page, I've
Mm-hmm.
done a live fit and fun for mental health, 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
And, we've now put them on YouTube at Robyn
Mm-hmm.
Priest Live Your Truth, and
Okay.
it's free. I
Mm-hmm.
go in there, but I've done things like a triathlon in the house. I've done spaghetti dance. Yesterday I played hide and seek. And
Hmm.
there's something fun, and then there's always a message about mental health. So please watch them. And if you love them, tell people, share them.
Okay.
Every single day. I think
Hmm.
I'm doing I missed one day. I think we're up to episode 74 or
Oh,
something.
really? Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, thank you very much, Robyn Priest, Living Your Truth.
Thank you.
And on that note, take care.